The Association for Baha'i Studies has been trying to be more intentional about the integration of the arts into our conference program, and to really see the arts as a way to influence discourses, to participate in discourse, and to contribute to discourse. So we're very fortunate today to be able to invite a local artist whose reach is certainly beyond the local. His name is Masud Ashley Olufani. He's an Atlanta-based mixed media artist whose studio practice is rooted in the discipline of sculpture. Masud has exhibited his work in group and solo shows in the United States, France, and Hong Kong. He has completed residencies at several colleges and prestigious art centers and has been awarded multiple prizes and grants, including the 2016 Southern Art Prize for the state of Georgia. Currently, Masud is an artist in residence at the Atlanta Contemporary Art Center. The title of this presentation today is The Residue of Memory and the Clarion Call of Truth, Healing Through Reclamation and Remembrance.
How is everyone doing today, all right? Wonderful. It's good to see you. I wasn't sure how many people would come out. It is the last day of the conference, and I didn't know how hungover y'all were from all that spiritual energy you've had for the last 3 days. So to look and see more than 1 or 2 people in the audience makes me feel pretty good. I wanted to just take a moment because I think what I'm going to share with you probably needs just a bit of context. This piece that I'm going to share with you, it's an excerpt from a larger project called Blocked, a Global Healing Project, which initially began with some information that I learned about an historic site here in Atlanta, Georgia. Much of my work as a visual artist deals with notions of memory and history, restorative justice, and the imprint of trauma. And once I found out this information, which will become clear during the course of the performance and subsequent remarks that are made following it, I knew something had to be done to mark the history in this particular space. Blocked, a Global Healing Project, began as an initial iteration here, primarily concerned with the city of Atlanta, but has developed and evolved to a global project that will encompass sites throughout Europe, including Portugal, Spain, London, Germany, the Netherlands, Brazil, Cuba, West Africa, and sites throughout the United States. It is hopefully my intent in doing this project was to create a touchstone for healing for our community in regards to trauma, historical trauma passed down through generations. I'm very blessed as I developed this project to have worked with some remarkable artists, one of which I'm fortunate is here with me, Miss Minka Wiltz, who is an extraordinary soloist and also just a really, really cool sister. If you haven't met her, she's very accessible. I hope you will say hello. She is not a Baha'i in the formal sense, but her spirit and her energy and the way she uses her art form is every bit in line with the spirit of our teachings. So we will do our thing, and we will go from there. Thank you all so much for your time and for your attention. Blocked at 5 points, Global Healing Project.
And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
It's mind-boggling. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Damn. It means that some of my forefathers or mothers were probably sold right here where I'm standing. That's what it means. It's mind-boggling. I'm sitting here thinking about it. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about it. It almost brings tears to my eyes. You never know. Baby, did you know that this used to be an auction? That this was where they auctioned slaves at, right here where we standing. Yes. Gwen Johnson.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
Now, you know that a slave auction house is right here at 5 Points Martyr Station. Well, I guess it's a shock, but not a surprise is the way to describe it, because, you know, I grew up right here in Georgia. I took Georgia history in the 8th grade, and they had us read Gone with the Wind, you know. And that was part of the curriculum, and now I realize what an incredible pile of steaming you-know-what that was in terms of history. The part that is a shock is that such a familiar place has such a wretched past. But it's not a surprise because Atlanta was part of the Confederacy. Atlanta was part of the United States, which a major part of the economy was based on the incredibly cheap labor of imprisoning and enslaving people. And we don't realize that the economic well-being of just about everybody, every citizen of the country, was benefited by the cheap labor of the slaves, except the people whose own labor was undervalued because slave labor kept prices down. Not to mention, that's completely aside from the evil and the immorality of enslaving people in the first place. So I'm kind of going, well, I don't know. Tim Merritt.
Were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to that tree?
I think it's ironic that this used to be a slave auction house? I mean, because it seems like a modern day slave auction hub, being that primarily African Americans use this hub to get to the places they need to go. I think that's the ironic part about it, you know? That it was once a slave auction and now it's predominantly used by blacks. Economic strengths on some people in the city. That's why we got to use the system the way that it is. Jeff Sobson.
Were you there when they laid him in that tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Oh, were you there when they laid him in freedom?
It's heartbreaking to know that that went on, and you know the physical aspect about it, the attitude and everything. Some people, they still have it. Joy Cadera.
I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be oh freedom.
Advertise. Publicize that this, because I think it's an important piece of history, especially for those using this station or of African American descent. Kristen Brown.
And be free. Were you there when they laid him in that tomb? Or were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Oh, are you there when they crucified my Lord?
With but a few remarks I endeavor to give my readers, but a faint representation of the hard treatment, ill usage, and horrid abuse the poor slave experiences while groaning under the yoke of bondage. That yoke which is not easy, nor the burden light. But being placed in that situation, well, to repine is useless. We must submit to our fate and bear up as well as we can under the cruel treatment of our despotic tyrant. I may sometimes be a little mistaken as I have to write from memory, and there is a great deal I have omitted for want of recollection at the time of writing. I cannot speak as I feel on some subjects. If those who read my history think I have not led a life of trial, well, I have failed to give a correct representation. I think I must be 40 years of age, but I don't know. I could not tell my wife my age. I have learned to read and write pretty well, and if I had opportunity, I could learn very well. My wife has a tolerable good education, which has been a help to me. I hope some will buy my books from charity, but I am no beggar. I am now entirely destitute of property. Where and how I shall live, I do not know. Where and how I shall die, I do not know. But I hope I may be prepared If it were not for the stripes on my back which were made while I was a slave, I would in my will leave my skin a legacy to the government, deserving that it might be taken off and made into parchment, and then bind the Constitution of glorious, happy, and free America. Let the skin of an American slave bind the charter of American liberty. William Grimes.
And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Everybody all right? Can we switch to the PowerPoint, the first slide on the PowerPoint, please? Thank you so much. That project, Blocked a Global Healing Project, as I said, began in Atlanta when the history of the 5 Points MARTA station came to me. And I've been blessed to have the support and the encouragement of so many key figures throughout the city. Some I've known and some I had not known until I began initiating this project. But it looks like if things, inshallah, if things go the way that they look like they may go, we will have funding to go across the globe to record the sites that are directly linked to the slave trade, to mark the global imprint of trauma, and to provide this history as a touchstone, this artifact of history as a touchstone of healing for the global community. The original iteration began as a permanent memorial to be installed at 5 Points MARTA Station. I'm in consultation with the city of Atlanta to find a permanent location for the design, which has already been completed. It is interesting how certain segments of the city, and this is not just unique to Atlanta, but across the nation indeed, have trouble when it comes to this history, marking this history, embracing this history, and ultimately healing from this history. I was asked through a third party from a contemporary artist friend of mine who's a wonderful soul here in the city of Atlanta, why would I want to engage, using my studio practice to engage around the history of slavery in the city of Atlanta? What good can come of that? And I thought that since this is the Baha'i Studies Conference, and there is a tradition of submitting papers, that I would write something and give myself an opportunity to kind of organize my thoughts as a response to that question. Minka Wiltz, thank you again so much. Extraordinary. So let me begin first by clearing up any potential misconceptions that may be a source of some curiosity and confusion. I am not an authority on the Baha'i faith. I am not a Baha'i priest. The Baha'i faith has no priestly class. Because from the Baha'i point of view, indeed from the writings of Baha'u'llah himself, the prophet founder of the faith, mankind has entered the stage of maturity and has the ability to recognize truth or falsehood for him or herself. And that is to be respected and honored for every member on the planet. So, conviction, belief, cannot come by the way of inheritance, cannot come because some charismatic leader told you this is what you are supposed to believe. It must be gained through the investigation, the effort, the commitment of the individual seeker. Because it has always been true that the most essential relationship for any single soul, more important than the relationship of child to parent, more important than the relationship of husband to wife, more important to the relationship of employee to employer, is the relationship of one soul to God. I am a simple, lowly, and flawed follower of the teachings of Baha'u'llah. I'm trying to live out in word and deed the spirit of these extraordinary writings, and sometimes because of grace I succeed, and sometimes, to my regret, I fail. But praise be to God, I rise each day with an opportunity to begin anew. Two of the most indispensable qualities one must have in one's spiritual journey are forgiveness and patience. Patience and forgiveness for others, and yes, indeed, patience and forgiveness for ourselves. And sometimes that is the most difficult lesson to internalize. And finally, I would like to request a few moments to give you my response to that question which I told you in the beginning. And I promise I will try really hard not to bore you. In the heart of Atlanta's downtown corridor, less than 1 mile from here, at the intersection of Peachtree and Marietta Streets, sits 5 Points MARTA Station, the central hub of the city's public transportation thoroughfare. Completed in 1981, the structure serves as the transfer point for all rail lines ferrying nearly 60,000 passengers a day to locations in and out of the city. As a student at Atlanta's Morehouse College in the mid-1990s, with little money and no car, I relied on the modest subway and bus system to navigate the distance between my apartment and the campus. 5 Points linked the Southwest Rail line near the Atlanta University Center campus to the North Line that dropped me off just 1 block from my one-room studio apartment. I made that journey hundreds of times during my 4 years at Morehouse, walking up and down the platforms, watching the rats scurry across the empty railroad tracks, speaking to waiting passengers, my books tucked under my arms, preoccupied with the moment, the immediate need to get from one place to the next, unaware of the secret these walls held. A haunting. The insistent voices of the convicted innocent. Voices brick and mortar could not silence. Voices of the slave market that once stood on these grounds. The Crawford, Frazier, Negro Brokerage House. And yet, there was nothing. No evidence of what took place here. No heroic marble or granite statues for the men, women, and children who passed from auction block to plantation. No bronze plaques like those placed at Civil War battlegrounds to mark space where flesh was traded for profit. There is only the phantom trace of memory, the specter of suppressed history, the vibration of trauma, muted by the clicking of heels on concrete, the shrill screeching of trains, and the bludgeoning force of indifference. But the ancestors are wise. And the soul, once it cracks the shell of the body, can speak to us in ways that we least expect it. While attending the premiere of a PBS documentary film about the Civil War, I learned of the troubled past of this historic site, and I was stunned. Not by the reality of the existence of slavery in Atlanta. The territory that would come to be known as Georgia started enslaving human beings in the 18th century, beginning first with the indigenous population, and then transitioning to importing Africans. Any superficial historical analysis will confirm that. You see, it was its proximity to my daily life. Indeed, to the daily lives of the thousands of Atlanta residents who utilize the MARTA rail system each day, nearly 80% of whom are black. This is what saddened and infuriated me. But what was most appalling, what was most deeply offensive to my spirit as a proud descendant of enslaved persons was the void of silence, the expunging of the historical record, the transgenerational erasure meant to obscure and conceal, to render invisible what was, so we can sell the illusion of what appears to be. Capital of the New South. The city too busy to hate. And yet, some memories linger. Some histories are too deeply embedded to be easily dislodged. They exploit the weaknesses in the structures meant to hold them, force their way through the cracks, push through the fissures in the walls to haunt the spaces we occupy, petitioning for justice, for reclamation and remembrance. Armed with this information, I knew something had to be done. I could not walk these grounds again as I had done so many times before, aware as I now am of the legacy of this space. I could not look in the countless black, brown, and white faces, knowing that the flesh of the landscape bore the muted cries of the dispossessed. Knowing meant responsibility, and my silence would make me complicit. No, I could not remain silent, because I am an artist, and part of that rich and noble inheritance demands that I be a witness for those who cannot speak for themselves, and that according to the Bahá'í Writings, I use the talent that God has placed within me to uncover some of the secrets of human existence and to reveal what has been hidden. I could not remain silent because I know that part of the pathology of racism is the erasure of memory, the wiping away of the inconvenient past to make of the mind a blank slate, a tabula rasa, upon which a lie can be written, and if codified, institutionalized, and repeated long enough, believed. I also could not remain silent because the voices of the ancestors compelled me, voices like that of the powerful human rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer. Never forget where we came from, and always praise the bridges that carried you over. But most importantly, I could not remain silent because first and foremost, I am a Baha'i. And the mandate of my faith as set forth by the Holy Scriptures is clear. Does not Christ say in the New Testament, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free? Did not Muhammad proclaim in the Holy Quran, truth has come and falsehood has vanished? And today the astonishing message of Baha'u'llah affirms the sacred origin of these teachings and augments them to extend their reach. Truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. Without truthfulness, progress and success in all the worlds of God are impossible for any soul. When this holy attribute is established in man, all the divine qualities will also be acquired. In the phenomenal world, there are 7 visual elements that are considered essential to the practice of art. Now, any formally trained painter, sculptor, or printmaker should be familiar with them. They include color, motion, space, line, texture, and rhythm. But the first and most important is light. All the other elements are impossible without light. Light clarifies. It exposes the dark spaces that would otherwise remain hidden. It reveals the hard edges, illumines the soft spaces, and more than that, it facilitates the healing of enduring wounds. Without the illuminating power of light, without the illuminating light of the truth, mankind walks blindly through time, stumbling over its dignity and knocking over its nobility. Without the scintillating spark of truth, we dehumanize and objectify one another as we flounder in the darkness, blind to our shared humanity, bumping into one another and refusing to trip the light switch just a few feet in front of us. We are very much like children, aren't we, sometimes? Babies, even, trapped within the wombs of our mothers. Our gestation period drawing to a close, clinging stubbornly, anxiously to what we know, trying to avoid at all cost what we do not. If only we could come to know that we were created of light, and that what we allow to remain in the darkness dims the hopes and the dreams of us all. It is the work of the artist to reveal some aspect of the human condition, to reach beyond him or herself, to uncover some dimension of ourselves. Musicians, dancers, visual artists, writers, actors sometimes struggle for a lifetime to manifest something real in their work. But even the greatest works of art in the end are only an approximation, an indication, a finger pointing towards a larger reality. You see, it is the work of the supreme artist, the one who manifests and animates all life with spirit, to reveal through his manifestations and his messengers what we truly are. And it seems to me this is what Baha'u'llah means, part of it, when he says, "With the hands of power I made thee, and with the fingers of strength I created thee, and within thee have I placed the essence of my light. Be thou content with it, and seek naught else. For my work is perfect, and my command is binding." We must all seek in our unique way to become candles in the dark, to use whatever means at our disposal to peel back the layers of deception and deceit, to uncover what was hidden so that a foundation can be laid in the bedrock of truth, alone upon which a new civilization, bound together by the stabilizing force of justice, can finally emerge. One of my favorite poets of the 20th century was a man named Robert Hayden, an educator, poet laureate, committed Baha'i, a writer of extraordinary depth and profound insight. I once read a biography of his life, and he was described as somewhat melancholy and given to bouts of depression. This is not unusual for an artist whose heightened level of sensitivity can be both a blessing and also sometimes a burden. But Mr. Hayden never wavered in his commitment to use his art form to advance our understanding of what it means to be human. I would like to close with his words in honor of all the victims of attempted erasure, in honor of all those whose stories are still waiting to be told. Frederick Douglass by Robert Hayden. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth. When it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action. When it is finally won, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. But oh, not with statues, rhetoric. Not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of this life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing. Thank you. I was going to share some works of art with you, but I feel like you have been burdened for 3 full days, and you have listened to me and Minka for the past 30 minutes. Burden? Okay, I'll just share a few. How are we doing on time? I don't want to go over. Are we okay on time? Okay. So I put together a bit of a PowerPoint. It's just a few images, but just to give you an idea of how various artists deal with notions of memory, residue, trauma, history. If we can move to the next, thank you so much. The brilliant American artist Carrie Mae Weems. This piece was from a series of works that she did. She's a photography-based artist. Dealing with notions of blackness in spaces that they are not traditionally considered to be welcome in. So idea of place. Next, please. I was blessed several months ago to be at the inauguration of the Center for the Memorial to Peace and Justice in Alabama. And it was one of the highlights of my life because I thought it was a beautiful example of dealing with a traumatic history in a really creative way and facing a difficult and traumatizing truth, but coming out on the other side with a deeper understanding of ourselves. I think it's an astonishing work of art. I encourage anyone who is in the area or is planning a trip or wants to take a vacation with their children and do something that will expand their understanding and their and their sense of humanity to go there. You know, the interesting thing is sometimes we segregate our history. So we will say that this is black history, this is Asian history, this is Native American history. History is history. And if you only get a fragment of that history, a one-sided story, then our understanding of our shared humanity will be truncated. So it's imperative that we galvanize the courage within ourselves to face the hard truths about who we have been collectively as a human family, so we can chart a more noble course as we go forward. Next slide, please. Kara Walker, Lot 44, Issues of Trauma. She's a wonderful artist. Does a lot of, most of her work deals with silhouette cutouts, subject matter taken from the antebellum slavery era. Next slide, please. The astonishing Vietnam Veterans Memorial, created by Maya Lin when she was a student at Yale University. It's a powerful side note to this piece. When it was unveiled that she had won the design competition, there was a certain segment of the population, bigoted and racist, that came out and said there was no way in the world they were going to allow a person of Asian descent, and I'm not going to use the term that they use, to design a memorial for the Vietnam veterans. And it is hard to imagine that location today without this extraordinary work of art. Next, please. Erasure, we talked about that. I think that's self-explanatory. That's not a work of art, that's just a photograph from the internet. Next, please. What do we choose to remember and what do we choose to forget? Sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get people, to get us, to get ourselves to grapple with traumatic history. But we will institutionalize the things that we see fit. The top of the image is, of course, Stone Mountain, Georgia, where we have some of our noble heroes from the Confederate Army. And beneath that, of course, is an archetype of why that war was fought in the first place. Don't need to go into that. Next slide, please. This is just an example of a work that I'm doing, and I'll end with this because I know we got to go. I do some work dealing with notions of power, historical power. This piece is called HNIC number 1 and number 2. And if you don't know what HNIC is, talk to some black folks in the audience and they will break it down for you, okay? And it'll become clear. But it's an iteration of myself as a slave driver and then also as a businessman. And I'm interested in this piece in illusions of power, where it comes from, how we put on the robes of temporary power and use it to buoy our sense of self, to prop ourselves up, and the illusion that is. So HNIC, number 1 and number 2. Black folks, make yourselves available for definition. If you're not clear about what that is, just see your resident black folk. We can break it down for you. Thank you, friends. Much love. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience.